Hey everybody, it's Allie and welcome to our Y&R chat for Sunday, April 3rd, 2016. Big news! Baby Big Dave was born this week. I actually would have liked to have been a fly on the wall while the writers were coming up with that scene of Shawn trying to recount maybe some happy memories from her childhood, a time where things were simpler, and thinking back to when she was a little girl and how her and Big Dave used to go to bars around town. And she decided that she really wanted her child to be named after good old Big Dave. Sage's face as she starts to realize that Shawn is thinking about things like names. Oh, that was a crushing wave of sad face came over Sage. But they decided to go ahead and accept that name, David, for the baby. And I think all of this happened just maybe one day short of Sage getting those adoption papers signed. Ooh, she didn't want to wait until after the baby was born, because then Shawn would continue to bond with the child. Oh, no. Let's try to lock down this deal before she goes into labor, which is probably the smart thing to do if you're Sage. They've been pinning a whole lot on a whole lot of hope, and it's not really the strategic thing to do. It does come off as so greedy, though. They hand her over, or I shouldn't even say they, because it really is Sage, soldiering this entire attempt. And Sage plops down the adoption papers in front of Shawn, who probably just wants to be eating a donut at that moment, taking things light. And I felt bad for the girl because she needs a lawyer. She needs somebody to help her through this. She maybe even needs some counseling that's not Sharon. She needs to talk to somebody who's not Sharon. Oh, I felt terrible for Sharon this week. She's just trying to be open and honest and helpful with Shawn. I think maybe Sharon identifies with what Shawn's going through. They've both been in that situation where they're adopting out a child. Sharon went through with it, and Shawn is only considering it at this point. She's on the cusp. And Sharon has absolutely no idea that Shawn didn't know about the fact that Sharon adopted out her child, and begins to talk about Cassie freely. And I think it made the little light bulb go on in Shawn's head that maybe it's a possibility to give the baby away now when she's not really capable of raising it, and there could be a potential that she could take the baby back later. Oopsie! Not exactly what Sharon had in mind. That conversation did not go as planned. Obviously, Sharon became very upset about it. Obviously, Shawn became very upset about it. She goes into labor right there in the coffee house. Sharon rushes Shawn to the hospital. Sage and Nick come. Sage is flipping out because, first of all, the child is premature. And that's something that she has just gone through on her own. That is her worst nightmare relived. And frankly, she says, as the doctor comes in and says, well, Shawn gave birth to the baby, but he's in the NICU, and Sage says, well, we'll go see him. We know the way. We've been there. I mean, I think that really spoke to Sage's frame of mind, but at the same time, Sage, first of all, flips out on Sharon as if it's Sharon's fault that Shawn went into labor. I don't know that much about pregnancy, but I'm pretty sure there's not a couple of things somebody could say to you that would make you go into labor. So I felt bad that Sharon felt bad, and I felt bad that Sage attacked her right there in the hospital. Sage has become this crazy woman. Even after Shawn gives birth, she begins to demand immediately that she see her son, which is entirely understandable. He's premature. She maybe at the very least just wants to see him with her own eyes to make sure that he's okay. But Sage tries to insert herself in between that and tries to discourage Shawn from seeing the baby. How can Sage not want Shawn to see the baby? I entirely understand why Sage is afraid, but keeping a young mother away from her child is kind of cruel. You do not want to gain this child at its mother's expense. That's just, it's despicable. And I think that it was a wonderful moment a little bit later on in the week as Sage started to realize, with Nick's help, that she's becoming a monster over this whole thing. She even said out loud, when did I become this person all hovering and desperate over this little girl? It was just, I felt bad. I feel kind of torn because I want to understand where Sage is coming from, and I do have a lot of empathy for her, but she's got to get herself in check. I mean, I've been predicting, and we've all been talking about for weeks, the fact that maybe Sage is just going to completely lose it, and that is somehow going to lead to the revelation of her child being still alive and being safe in Sharon's arms. But it kind of seems like maybe that's starting to unfold without Sage even knowing it, but certainly with Sharon's help. Sharon's been thinking a lot about everything at Fairview lately. She's been having those weird nightmares. OMG, by the way, Sharon looked so amazing this week. I loved that gray sweater that she had on. It was kind of cable knit through like a vest, and then the sleeves were these thick lace sleeves. They were so thick it was almost like a tablecloth. I couldn't stop staring at how beautiful it was. She had on those kind of circular pewter, they looked like they were pewter anyway, earrings. She always has beautiful jewelry. She's always so put together. I loved Sharon so much this week. I loved her conversation with Nick, giving him wisdom about everything that's going on in his life. And it's nice to see Sharon in a stable place before we all know that the rug is going to get ripped out from under her. Dylan is starting to have this sinking feeling about Dr. Anderson and Patty and what Patty needed to tell him and what on earth Patty's motive would have been for killing Dr. Anderson. So Dylan goes to see Patty. She says nothing other than the baby, the baby. Dylan goes to Fairview and he begins talking to the nurses, asking questions, and reveals to Sharon that none of the staff there even remember her giving birth. You'd think it would be a big moment in those people's career, or at least something memorable from the last couple of months, and none of them remember it. So Dylan sits Sharon down and he's trying to gently coax information out of her that might help put the pieces of this puzzle together. And little by little, Sharon starts to remember that there was another nurse there. We saw the nurse there at the time, and she kind of remembers that the woman was sort of hovering in the background, and flash to that nurse hovering in the background as Shawn is in the hospital with little Big Dave. I'm not sure. I'm wondering if that nurse is either going to be very helpful simply in leading us to the reveal of the baby switch secret, or is there any chance that that nurse is planning something shady with Shawn's baby too? I'm not sure. I think it's for, even though we have theorized that either Sage or Sharon might be the one to go back into Fairview and uncover the secret, I'm beginning to think that maybe this is Dylan's secret to uncover, which is going to be incredibly heartbreaking for him. I'm afraid that he's ultimately going to figure out on his own the secret that is going to destroy his own life, and then he's going to have to turn around and break it to Sharon. Victor Newman, guilty as charged. Who would have thunk it? I mean, as the week progressed, specifically through Monday and Tuesday's show, I really thought Victor's gonna get away with this. He's gonna take everyone on and win, but that's not what happened. Guilty as charged, even though he gave this incredible interrogation of all of his family, all of his enemies, called all of the people back onto the stand one by one, giving them an epic guilt trip, which almost everyone fell for. Pretty much everyone got on the stand and ate a little bit of crow or backtracked a little bit. Of course, throughout everything that Victor was saying, even though it was an amazing performance, there was not a word about the actual crime or the facts of the case. It was entirely Victor Newman explaining why he's Victor Newman and why it's okay. I kept thinking, what is this, the world's most laid-back judge? I mean, even at the point where the judge said, I'm gonna give this man the presumption of innocence and I'm gonna give some leeway here for him to do what he needs to do, I was thinking, this is so outside of reality, I almost can't handle it. I mean, the judge was looking like he was paying attention to everything that was going on, but I'm like, is he doing a crossword puzzle back there? And what's Christine doing this whole time? Cricket's filing her nails or something at the prosecution desk? Nobody objects to any of this, but must stop looking for reality. That is not what this was. What it was just a magical episode through Monday and into Tuesday. I have to just give a slow clap to Eric Braeden. What a performance. I mean, him calling everyone onto the stand, his closing argument, absolutely everything. It was to a T, right down to the fact where he tells the jury, you now may have the honor of finding me not guilty. Once again, and justifying everything that I've done and confirming that everything I've done is okay in the name of the family. I mean, it might as well have very much been that. I mean, don't you know I was born in an orphanage and I built this company from the ground up. It was all of the same tropes that we hear from Victor time after time, the same excuses one might say, but it was thoroughly entertaining. I found it delightful. I found it tear-worthy. There were most certainly moments where I had tears in my eyes, not just for Victor by any means, but for the broken relationships that surround him and his life. I really, really expected that this was somehow going to bubble up into a Victor gets released and everyone forgives him, but that is not what happened. Instead, the judge just goes, the jury, first of all, finds him guilty, and the judge says, yeah. All of that aside, you're not on trial here for how you feel and who you are. You're on trial for this specific crime right here, and guilty 10 years in state prison. Wow. I mean, it washed over the courtroom it seemed like through Monday's show, everyone was afraid that he was going to get off. They're realizing that, oh no, he's going to get out and we're all going to be in really deep trouble. And that's, I think, what everyone was thinking and expecting when they filed into the courtroom, only to find that that's not the case. And almost a sense of regret came over the Newman family, and while it was Phyllis in absolute, almost smug glee, so thrilled to watch Victor finally get his justice. The look on her face was smug is the absolute best way to describe it. She's almost getting the complete revenge that she's looking for. What threw me for the loop was the Newman family, and specifically Nikki, acting like, I don't know, like they weren't at least partly responsible for putting Victor there. And there's this moment after the verdict has been read, the Newmans are out in the hallway, and Nikki is going on about how Victor still loves them and we're still a family, and Victor's being brought through to be carted off to his cell, which don't even get me started on all the ways he was pushing around that jail guard, like, can I have a few minutes with my family? Does that work in reality? I'm Victor Newman, I need a moment, please. And he addresses his family, and Nikki and, specifically Nikki, but Nick and Victoria kind of off in the background with this vibe like, don't worry, Dad and Victor, we're still a family. We still love you, still here for you. And Victor's response is, I have no family. You're all dead to me. It was a groundswell of emotion and shock, but I mean, I suppose it was shocking only to them, not to me. I mean, of course, Victor's disowning them after all this. They all, one by one, not only turned him in and kicked him out of his company, but they all testified against him in court. Did they really think that he was gonna blow kisses to them on his way to the state pen? No prison walls could hold him. No prison thugs could beat him. I mean, Victor in prison is, he's freaking lethal. Victor's fists are a lethal weapon. Oh man, I mean, you think the guy's gonna have a hard time in prison? Forget it. He's 70 years old and he can still kick a guy's ass. I laughed as he called the prison thug Bobby Boy. He probably had imagined Billy Abbott's face on this guy's body. If your name starts with a B, you better be prepared to have the word boy following your name as a nickname. It was a great scene. The guy tries to pull a shank on Victor Newman, and Victor just turns around and absolutely decimates him. I mean, the guy's on the floor, writhing in pain. Eric Braeden probably loved that scene. It's hard for me to watch Victor being bullied or weakened or threatened in some way like that. It tugs on my heartstrings, but I think Eric Braeden was probably really chewing it up, especially the way the guards had to pull him off of the other guy and cart him away. I mean, it probably feeds right into Victor's ego, and I should separate Eric Braeden from Victor. I'm sure Eric Braeden liked the opportunity to play that sort of a scene, but I'm sure Victor was just as happy because it played right into his ego. I'm sure that both of them kind of enjoyed it on that level. The interesting piece of this is that as the thug is getting beat up, he makes some kind of comment like, oh, he's not going to be happy about this, indicating that there's someone higher up than him on the prison food chain who is calling some shots. And then the very end of Friday's show, we have a scene of someone opening up Victor's jail cell and revealing themselves to him, and Victor just says, so it's you. So I think now is a good time for us to kind of chat about who are all of the various possibilities of people it could be. I mean, I am seeing some obvious ones. I haven't seen any casting updates that might rock my world and think that it's anything really far out of left field. My best guess here is that it is Ian Ward. I'm kind of thinking maybe the actor is on recurring status, and he certainly has a recent beef with Victor and with everyone, and with Nikki off the wagon. Who knows how that could play in? And frankly, I'm still wondering if there's any chance that Ian Ward could, and if this is Ian Ward specifically, if that could connect in later with Sharon and Sage and the baby swap. Phyllis won. I think that in a lot of ways, even though Victor is behind bars and he was convicted, Phyllis doesn't necessarily feel that that equals justice. Yes, she won the court case, but she's lost something that is so much more and that can't be replaced, that can't be fixed in a legal way. So I think that in every way, even though phase one of Phyllis's plan was successful, she has decided to move into phase two, which is really destroying everything that Victor loves and needs in order to tip the scales in not just a legal justice way, but in kind of a karmic way. And the problem is it's continuing to cause this wedge drive this wedge between Phyllis and Jack. They're continuing to fight over it. I think in Jack's mind, naively, he thought that Victor going to jail would be enough for Phyllis, and it's simply not. So they have an argument over it, and what does Phyllis do? She goes running immediately to Billy's new bachelor pad, aka the former stately, elegant Chancellor estate. And she leans on him. She cries on his shoulder, and he tries to give her the same sage advice that got him through his ordeal with Adam, and he tries to preach forgiveness to her, but she really opens up to him, and I mean, as she's been doing, and continues to explain her position, and it really does feel like it's a complete breaking down of the Phyllis character to the absolute most core level, and there is only one person in her world who she feels like she can turn to that has an understanding. Of course, Victoria walks in on Billy helping her understand. I mean, she's crying, literally crying on him, and Victoria sees it and just has a sense that something is up. And I think I think Victoria is picking up on it because it's there. I mean, she asks if there's anything going on. They quickly skirt away. Phyllis leaves, and Victoria says, "Hey, house looks great. Glad you picked this gray color for the walls," which does not look gray to me, by the way. Just on a side note, it's blue. So I don't know where gray came from, unless it's casting a blue hue or something. But Victoria loves the look of his leather, dark, dank looking bachelor pad. I digress. Her housewarming gift to him was the beautiful engagement ring that he gave her only weeks earlier. And she gave back the ring, and I feel like Billy didn't even try to get her to take it back. And I think that was the biggest cue to Victoria that something more is going on with Billy, and specifically with Billy and Phyllis. I said it last week, I have to say it again. The nature of Victoria and Billy's relationship is that they break up, and then usually because he did something terrible, and then he begs for forgiveness, and she just gets worn down and worn down and worn down until she takes him back. But he really isn't pursuing it as strongly this time, and I think she knows that he's moving on. He's in the process of moving on, and she's suspicious, rightly so, that it's with Phyllis. Victoria has been bonding quite a bit with Jack this week over their mutual desire to end the war between the families, as if that'll ever happen. And she decides to tell Jack that she picked up on something that didn't seem appropriate between Billy and Phyllis. And I immediately thought, Jack is not going to get this. There's no way that that he's even allowing the seed to be planted in his mind that it might be a romantic thing that's going on between them. Because why would Jack even think that? Jack would have... It would be absolutely absurd for Jack to think that Phyllis was having an affair with his brother. Think if this was Billy Miller. Think if this was any of the other recasts or versions or incarnations of Billy. It would seem absurd. Somehow this relationship between this Phyllis and this Billy is, I think, sort of inside of the fact that both characters have been recast more recently. So to Jack, I don't think it's a real possibility, yet Phyllis clearly is pushing Jack away and becoming close with his brother. She tells Jack, look, the reason why, I mean, even when Jack tries to confront them about something that Victoria mentioned going on between them, Phyllis kind of skirts around it, saying the reason I'm turning to Billy is because Billy gets it. And I guess I feel like Phyllis is ignoring someone else who does get it right in front of her face. You think that Jack doesn't get what it's like to be at war with Victor? That Jack doesn't get what it's like to want revenge on Victor? I think that, as Jack said this week, he's just in a place where he's trying to be a rational adult, making rational adult decisions that are not driven by revenge. But I don't know, she doesn't see it. Do you guys see it? I guess that's a good question for the chatters this week. Does anybody think that Jack is being unreasonable in all of this? I mean, he did make a good point that if he would have walked away from this war with Victor years ago, maybe it wouldn't have gotten this far. It was Jack constantly battling with Victor that caused Victor to do the whole Marco thing that affected Phyllis. So Jack and everything that he's done is what kind of pushed the dominoes and led to where we are now. So I feel like I understand the reason why Jack is choosing not to pursue it. I'm wondering if there's anyone out there in Chatterland who is thinking that maybe Jack is just being completely unsupportive of Phyllis and hypocritical. I'd love to hear from some other points of view this week. The thing that kills me is that it's just kind of gonna be more things for them to fight over, because Phyllis is moving forward with Passkey. I mean, phase 2 is launching Passkey with Billy and using it to bolster Jabot and destroy Newman Enterprises, forcing Victor to sit in jail now and read the newspapers about how his company is tanking. Jack, of course, is opposed to it. He's the CEO of the company. I would think that he would have some say over whether or not they move forward, but Phyllis is strong-arming it, and it's just steamrolling ahead whether Jack has anything to say about it or not. They call this big press conference. I guess I shouldn't call it big, but they call a press conference to announce that they're launching Passkey. Well, you know who's not going to take that lying down? Victoria. She knows that she worked with Natalie intimately to develop this project, and all of a sudden it's Jabot's project. They're bringing it out into the light, and she's just supposed to stand there with egg on her face? No, I don't think so. She, in the middle of the press conference, after Billy is giving a speech about how great Passkey is and how revolutionary it is and how Jabot is bringing this to the world, she marches right up to him and says, "You're a liar and you're a thief." And she whacks him right over his face in the middle of everybody and declares, "I'm not a loser, I'm a Newman. You want a war, Billy? It's on." I loved it. I was so happy to see Victoria deciding to be the vicious tigress daughter of Victor Newman and not take it lying down. My only question was, you want a war? It's on? When wasn't there a war on? I think this war has been going on for every single episode that I've ever seen in 23 years. And I really wouldn't have it either way. I loved that she put Billy right in his place, and I think it's going to make for some interesting viewing next week and into the future. I tell ya, I really have been zeroing in and enjoying the performance of our new Billy lately, and I keep wanting to talk about it, and I just never end up giving myself a chance to talk about it. But I really like how this actor is bringing some new depth to that character, bringing us something a little bit different. And I thought that maybe this week for the poll, we might dig into that and see if you guys are feeling sort of the same way as I am. Basically, what I would love to know from you guys this week is, who's your favorite Billy Abbott? I mean, we've seen, I think, 4 major portrayals of him. The first being David Tom, and you can kind of think of him as the original adult Billy. He was kind of a teen though, and he came back just more recently, not for very long, but They recast him, I think, because he was looking a little too young. But we also had the Billy Miller incarnation, which feels very, very different from what we got now. We just recently had the Burgess Jenkins incarnation, which was also a little bit different. And then we're kind of finally settling now into the Jason Thompson role. And I'm wondering how you guys are feeling about it. I'd love to get some feedback on this week, So if you'd like to go to yrchat.com and tell me who your favorite Billy is, and in addition, how are you feeling that this current Billy is fitting into the landscape of the show, I would love to hear from you about that. Finally, we see Kevin coming back with Passkey. He's the one that sort of brought that into Genoa City, brought that into our lives, and he just disappeared on it for so long. So it was good to see him back up in the mix. Good to see Natalie letting her hair down, and a little hints here and there of flirtings between Natalie and Kevin, and a little jealousy coming from Mariah. So I think that'll be something maybe fun and lighthearted that we'll be seeing in the coming weeks. I think there are some other, clearly we're seeing a division. I think everyone in Genoa City is going to have to pick a side, whether they're going to be on board with Phyllis and Billy and Jabot, or they're going to be on board with Victoria and Newman Enterprises. And there are still a couple of players, potentially major players, who are still trapped in the in-between. I think that Luca is one of them. Luca comes snaking around the scene this week, and he's like, "Oh, hi, Jack, how you doing?" And Jack just turns around and goes, "You're fired." That was very funny. I laughed out loud about that, and Luca seems shocked that that would be the case. I'm not sure why, but he made some kind of ominous comment, Luca did, about how, "I can't believe they fired me. They're gonna need someone like me." So either he knows something more, or he's just predicting that the war from the other end is coming, that shots are being fired, and that it's not going to be nice, neat, and clean. They're going to need strong players. I don't know if it's possible that Luca is going to go work at Newman Enterprises now. Maybe he's going to start working with Victoria now. Maybe Victor's It's a Wonderful Life fantasy that we got a couple weeks ago, where we saw Victoria and Luca together, was a little bit of a premonition. Maybe Luca and Victoria will begin working very closely with one another and begin to get close with one another. I don't know. And then, of course, we have the Adam factor. Where is Adam going to fall in all of this? I think we know that Adam's probably going to end up falling right back into the chair at Newman Enterprises. He's sitting back watching the news unfold, and everyone talking about how Newman stock is plummeting, and it's gonna be far too tempting for Adam. I mean, there's maybe only one person who can truly save Newman Enterprises, and I think we all know it's Batman. Sound the alarm bells, crack a bottle of champagne. Christine actually won a case. In so many ways, I think Victor's trial was about getting justice for all of the people that Victor has hurt, and giving Victor some comeuppance, and actually justifying the fact that Christine is the prosecutor in Genoa City. I really think if she would have lost one more trial, she would have lost her job. So her career had to have been riding on this, right? The sad thing is, of course, the disbarment process is happening at the same time for Michael, and he is going through all the emotions of realizing what that means for him personally, for his life, for his relationships. He had this line where he says, if I'm not a lawyer, who am I? He's been that for so long, and I think he's going to have to kind of rewrite his own identity. Everyone seems to blame Phyllis for the fact that Michael is now being disbarred, which is shocking to me. And not only that, but Lauren was I can see it coming from Christine, but Lauren was digging into Phyllis as if it was her fault that Michael went through with this. I don't see it that way at all. I think that, first of all, Michael is a big boy. He made his own decisions. Yes, maybe it was a harebrained idea that Phyllis would come up with it in the first place, but Michael didn't have to agree with it. I think part of the reason he agreed with it in the first place was because Lauren was on board. Lauren was encouraging him, saying that somebody needed to give justice with Victor. I remember her saying, what if Victor had done that to us? How would you feel if Victor would have put a strange man in my bed? And I think that is what gave Michael, at least in part, the fuel to move forward with his decision. And now this week, Lauren is backtracking on that. I was so glad. I got several comments from other people who noticed that. Consuela and Anna and Nicole on YouTube had all commented like, I'm confused about where Lauren is coming from. And I'm so glad I wasn't the only one that was a little flabbergasted about that, but also just because I feel like Michael was the one who made ultimately the decision. Nobody made him do it. But I am hoping that even if he does get disbarred, that it will end up being not an end for him, but hopefully an interesting new beginning. I couldn't help but think, as Michael was talking about being disbarred, that it's not the first time he's been disbarred. He was able to practice law again eventually. I'm pretty sure that when I first started watching the show, he was still disbarred, because I have very clear memories about Cricket, his victim, going out of her way to help him get his law license back. So it's not the first time Michael has lost his law license. Probably won't be the last, but I am very, very intrigued by the previews from Friday's show, where Victoria is offering Michael some insane amount of money to come work at Newman Enterprises, which I think is such a fabulous idea, not only because it's gonna get Michael up into the mix in a totally different way, but because it's also going to ultimately pit him against his brother Kevin and force both of those really cool and complex characters right into the forefront and involve them in this erupting war. Last week I let it rip pretty hard about that remodeling of the Chancellor Mansion, and I was just overjoyed to hear all of your comments throughout the week. At the very least, even whether you agreed or didn't agree with me, it was nice to hear that the remodeling kind of struck a chord with everybody in one way or another. Remodeling the Chancellor Mansion, question mark? That was last week's poll. 59% of people said, no, this must not happen, which I was a little bit surprised about. I kind of really thought I was gonna be more alone on that, but I will say 32% kind of were a little more middle of the road, saying, I'm okay with a change at the Chancellor Mansion, but I'm not liking this particular style so far. And then 9% of you said, I like the remodel. And I was a little proud of myself because for this metric for the poll, I put the question was, I like it. Catherine was never afraid of a little plastic surgery. I was proud of myself because Catherine was famous for her facial rejuvenation. So perhaps she wouldn't mind having the Chancellor estate rejuvenated, one might say. But I got some really good comments here at yrchat.com from Connor and Consuela and Lot Valley and Marianne, who says the nicest thing I can say is that they didn't burn it down. Oh, those were great. There was more people in Genoa City coming into the new mansion this week reacting to it. As I mentioned, Victoria saying about it being gray, which threw me for a loop. I loved Jack's line. He said, does Jill know about this? Jill may have left you the house, but did you know you painted it dark? And my absolute favorite reaction, and I think This pulls me. I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to get on board with this remodel because it's clear we're going to be seeing the mansion in this way for a while. And my favorite quote about the mansion came from Kevin. It was wonderful. Kevin and Mrs. C had a very special relationship, so I really appreciated his take on it. So I transcribed it and wrote it down here for you. Kevin walks in to the new and improved Chancellor Mansion, and he says, "Holy, Billy remodeled Mrs. C's place. I think she'd be happy. She wouldn't want this place to be some big ghost house on a hill. However, if you're going to be living here, you're going to have to do business here, host at least 24 random weddings, maybe even one for yourself, and be sure you fight with Jill." Wonderful, wonderful, brief yet appropriate line coming from Kevin. I thought that was really lovely. I think maybe with time I'll get used to it. One thing that did occur to me though that I wish Y&R would have done, and there's probably no point in continuing to go over my wish list, but especially this week, thinking about Nikki and her struggles, shall we say, with alcohol, I thought, I wish they would have done some kind of, who knows, pull a new will out of the attic and leave Nikki the Chancellor Mansion. Wouldn't that have been fabulous? I mean, Nikki and Catherine were the best of friends. She even mentioned this week that she didn't feel comfortable at the ranch anymore after Nick's ex-wife burned it down, and she's had so many memories at the ranch. Wouldn't it have just been wonderful if Y&R came up with a twist out of thin air and allowed Nikki to own the mansion and kind of lord over it in her fabulousness forever? You have mad bull skills. That was last week's Who Said It quote. Nick and Sage were playing a little charade, a game of charades with Faith and Shawn. And Faith and Shawn Nick and Shawn were on the same team acting out like a bullfight. And they were so happy with Nick's ability to become the bull that Sage tells Nick, "You have mad bull skills." So Edith got that right. Henry, Victoria, Connor, Candida, let's see, Tawny got it right. Cassie and Aaron and Sharita all got it right. Congratulations for being such astute watchers of Y&R. The quote that I picked for this week is also a little bit fun. I think as we're seeing the war of the Newmans and the Abbotts, maybe I'll keep picking fun little one-off comments. So who do you think said this? "Let's go eat some carbs." I will tell you, it was sort of a celebratory comment, which always works for me. I don't drink alcohol, so maybe that's why it caught me off. I'm like, that sounds like the kind of celebration I want to have. Let's go eat some carbs. If you think you know who said it, you can go to yrchat.com, leave your guess, and if you guess correctly, I will give you a big shout out on next week's Y&R Chat. Well, speaking of Nikki, Gary left a really good voicemail early in the week regarding Nikki's drinking, and his perspective was, from watching it, that it was really, really well done, and that the fact that her drinking really added the texture to the enormity of what's going on with her family right now. Gary says it's artful. It was artful the way Y&R presented it. She stared at the vodka bottles and that was it. She drank it. They didn't belabor it. She didn't quiver as she was bringing the glass to her lips. She just drank it. We've all been through the other visuals before of her struggle, so I think that it was the right tone, and I see why she did it. Very dramatic. I actually agree, Gary. I mean, I've said so many times, I hate the drinking storylines, but I think you nailed it in your description. It wasn't belabored. Nikki just drank the vodka and she was drunk, and don't even get me started about her being on the stand and Victor calling her out about being a drunk. That was humiliating. Of course, now everybody's worried about Nikki. Jack is hovering over Nikki. He's probably hoping to get a new recruit for the Abbott Winters rehab foundation. I guess I should have guessed that Nikki was going to fall off the wagon. It couldn't have been a coincidence that we had a rehab center swirling around the area. So I don't know if Nikki's going to continue to drink. It seems right now like that's the decision that she's making. She's really, really fallen far. She doesn't feel like she has a place anymore, and I don't think she quite knows what to do with herself. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Nikki continue to drink, and maybe Jack and Neil being there for her, maybe even possibly Nikki developing a relationship with either Jack, as we talked about last week, or Neil. Gina left me some fun voicemails and said, I think this is going to be the end for Nikki and Victor. But I've thought that before and I've been wrong. But it will be interesting to see if their relationship can weather this storm. Yes, the story of Nikki and Victor is tangled up in all of this, and Y&R did a wonderful job of zeroing in on her specifically this week. I don't know if they are going to make it. It's clear that these two people most certainly do still love each other, but this might be the end. I don't know where they could go from here, but as Gina said, I've said that before, probably about a half dozen times. Aaron on YouTube says, is something wrong with Victor this week? Last week I voted in the poll that Victor was faking his seizures, but this week in court, he kept turning his head to listen to everyone's testimony like he was, going deaf in one of his ears. I'm wondering if Victor is getting sick for real. I love that you mentioned this week, Aaron, because I really think so. There's no way that Y&R dangled that carrot in front of us about Victor's medical issues and then are just going to drop it. And I got a voicemail from Beatrice, who was mentioning a casting update that I'd kind of heard about, a little bit of buzz about. Alicia Coppola, who I guess, as Beatrice says, is an actress from another world, is being cast on Y&R. I had saw this update that she was cast as a doctor, but I didn't know who the actress was. Is she an actress like a Coppola from the famous, as in Francis Ford Coppola? I don't know. I don't know who she is. She's gorgeous. Absolutely stunning. But she's cast as Dr. Meredith Gates. And Beatrice was saying that she thinks this doctor is going to be a prison doctor and that she might possibly be someone who's going to be a romance for Victor. I'm sure he'd love that. He would love that to no end. A sexy young nurse. Maybe that's the way that Victor's going to get out of jail, though. Maybe they're going to find that he's not healthy enough to be in prison, or who knows what kind of strings this doctor could pull. That could be the key to how Victor ultimately gets out of this. Rocks Grace on YouTube says, I am so perplexed as to what the powers that be were hoping to ultimately gain with taking Victor so far. Yes, Victor has always been ruthless and done bad things, but I feel the Victor we've seen lately is so despicable that I can't even look at the character anymore. I really wanted to talk about that comment too this week because it was such a mixed bag that, Victor presenting his side of the trial, because I did cry. There were points where I really connected in with Victor and I really understood him. And then there were other points where I could not even believe how egotistical he was being. It was definitely a turnoff. There were points where I was watching and trying to accept, and then there were points where I was like, this guy, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near him in real life because he's an egomaniac. He is so selfish. He's just got megalomania all over him. The way he called out Nikki, the way he acted like he was a saint, like everyone around him was the sinner and he was the saint. So, I feel it all. I really do understand and feel both sides of that, but I think a lot of people probably do feel the way that you do. Let's see. One other little casting note here. Y&R cast someone named Michael Rourke, who I don't know if could he possibly be a Rourke, as in Mickey, but he's a young man, and he's cast onto the show as someone called Travis. I don't know if it's possible that maybe he could end up being Shawn's boyfriend. I know that's the only thing that came into my mind. Sharita left me a voicemail, and she said, the problem for Dylan and Sharon might be the fact that she lied about the miscarriage before she went to Fairview. I really liked thinking about that, because no one could blame Sharon, or Sharon can't be in any kind of trouble for what happened with the baby switch, but that Sharita kind of got me thinking there about the fact that maybe it'll somehow come to light vis-a-vis Mariah, possibly, that Sharon was lying about that miscarriage in the first place, and that could end up causing the final break in their relationship, because I think we're all kind of looking for that Nick and Sharon reunion. It's clear that they're bonding, but something big has to happen to pull Dylan and Sharon apart in order for that to happen. And it just seems, by the way, that most people who commented this past week on the Shawn situation, nobody really thinks that Shawn's going to give the baby to Sage. We know Sage is ultimately going to get her baby back, and I just can't really see Shawn deciding to give the baby to Sharon. I'm almost wondering if this Travis guy is just going to come back into Shawn's life and they're going to go off and raise their baby together, and maybe it was all just sort of to bide some time before the baby switch got revealed. I don't know. I don't know where the crush with Nick is going. We definitely saw Shawn crushing on Nick at various points throughout the week. I don't know if that's just a little side note kind of thing, or if that's going to become something bigger. I do feel like there's a lot of question marks around that particular situation. Sharbut on YouTube says, sorry, Allie, I'm going to have to totally disagree with you on Summer. She's a total disgrace. Tell me, in what world is Phyllis in the wrong here? She has every right to feel betrayed. Why would Phyllis be the one to reach out to Summer? That spoiled brat has seen on many occasions that her mother has been suffering. Come on now. She's seen and heard everything that has happened to her mother, yet Phyllis is the one being villainized, or so it seems, by you. Ooh, how's about letting me have it? Well, I kind of think that me last week talking a little bit about Summer's character was more about me trying to dig into Summer's motivation and kind of understand where Summer is coming from, as opposed to me specifically trying to villainize Phyllis. I think that I've talked probably more than once about there really aren't any villains here. There really aren't any heroes. Phyllis is neither a sinner or a saint. Nobody really is. But I've also talked quite a bit about Phyllis's character and where she's coming from. And I've had so many points of identification with Phyllis's plight and the emotional way that she's feeling. And maybe I've underrepresented that. I'm not sure. I have talked quite a bit about loving Gina Tognoni and really feeling her performance, specifically last week on the stand. It was incredible. I think that the piece Y&R really hasn't given us is Summer's motivation. While I do think that Phyllis is the adult, Phyllis is the mother, Phyllis should be involving and being the leader in her daughter's life, the piece that we're not really getting is why Summer has chosen to side with Victor over Phyllis. And maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe it's me struggling and reaching to try to understand why she would be doing that. Maybe I'm kind of trying to fill in the gaps that Y&R isn't giving us. I do want to like Summer. I want to empathize with Summer. I want to understand where she's coming from. The other part of it might just simply be that Y&R needs to create drama. They need to have more reasons for Phyllis to have her motivation to want to go after Victor so hard. And I really think we're going to be seeing in the coming weeks absolutely everybody being forced to take a side. And the more people they can put on opposite sides of the business problem, the business war that have personal relationships, the more drama it's going to create. I think we're going to see that, of course, with Phyllis and Summer, and with Michael and Kevin. I think that Billy and Victoria, I think they're trying to create this split and put as many people on opposite sides to create as much drama as possible. Daisy on Facebook says, I don't think that Billy and Phyllis are in love. I think they're turning to each other because they have a common goal. Justice for what Victor did to Jack and Phyllis, or so they claim. I think Billy and Phyllis's revenge tactics make it look more like they want power. Like Victoria said to Billy, her father's in prison. He's not hurting Victor, he's hurting her. Victor's just an excuse. Their families are collateral damage. So I think Phyllis and Billy may end up in Catherine's house with ugly blue paint. Even if they end up together, they will still be alone. Yeah, I mean, I think that might very well be the case. Nailed it. Gosh, oh, I just want to give a little shout out to a couple of new Y&R chatters here. Shawn left me a comment on YouTube with a video link, and he was a long time Y&R chatter, but a first time commenter. So thank you for sharing and for commenting. It's always good to hear from you. And T. Nicole on YouTube too was happy to tell me last week that she's a new chatter. She just found it, and it's kind of fun to be able to hear somebody else talking about the show. I think that's another comment I got a little too late. Just to clarify, if I listen to like voicemails and read comments throughout the week, specifically for the voicemails, I'll watch Monday's show and then I'll go in and listen to all of the voicemails and read all of the comments that I received on Monday. So that way, when I'm getting your feedback, it's on the episode that I've just watched. What I mentioned last week about Saturday is that I usually watch the Friday episode on Saturday. So and then I check the voicemails and check the comments and everything, usually by the morning. And then I don't keep checking before doing Y&R chat because I got a bunch of other stuff to collate to make it all come together. So just a clarification on that point. I'm reading comments and hearing your good stuff all throughout the week. But if you're kind of looking to sneak in a comment and hope that it gets into the Y&R chat, usually if you want to leave it before Saturday morning, I'll get it before I do the current Y&R chat, but I'll always get the comments and always read and listen and like and love no matter what. So keep them coming. And so we come to our Soap for Soap Fans giveaway extravaganza. I totally look forward to this so much. I make these little handmade bars of soap which are inspired by The Young and the Restless, and they take 6 weeks to cure. So I'm biting my fingernails for 6 weeks until they're ready to get into your hands. And now it's time for a giveaway. I'm so stoked. Let me show you the little prizes here. I've been hinting about it throughout the past 2 weeks, but for spring 2016, I made 2 soap couples. Each bar of soap represents a person on The Young and the Restless, and the first soap couple, as you saw last week, was Mr. Paul, cucumbery, and you have Ms. Cricket, which is like floral and herbal and sweet and appley and delicious. So here's couple number 1, and those you saw last, oh my goodness, probably December it's been since I made those. But the 2 brand new ones that you would not have seen are Lily and Kane. Lily is gorgeous. It's a Lily fragrance. I know I'm kind of obvious on that one, but it smells so good. And then we have Kane, who's like kind of more like the Neil soap, if you remember that one, kind of fresh, clean, sexy man. He looks real cool too. Lily looks real cool too. And I'm so glad that I picked Lily and Kane because they just got back together in the spring, and then as soon as I saw them reunited, I was like, that's perfect, because I've got Lily and Kane soaps in my curing closet getting ready to be released to the Y&R chat community. So these are really cool. They all look really neat, different colors and swirls, and if you want to see them, you'll get to see them and read the full scent descriptions when you are entering the giveaway if you're interested. So the prize is going to be your choice of any one of these 4 bars of soap. So what you're gonna have to do is just pick which one you want, and then you're gonna win it. So maybe start thinking about which one you're gonna want. Here's what you can do. Let me see, I wrote it all down so I I don't mess it up. Here's what you can do. I'm gonna give you my blog address, and you can go to the blog. There will be a huge banner that says Soap for Soap Fans Giveaway. All you have to do is click on that banner, and there'll be photos of all of the soaps. There'll be complete descriptions of all of the soaps. All you need to do is leave a comment on the blog and tell me which one you want. I would pick, I've said this before, but I would pick based on the scent descriptions, not just like which character I like best, because you want to be able to smell. You want to pick the one you smell, that you like the smell of best, and everybody has different tastes. So that's the criteria that I would do. But it's very easy. You can go to the website, and that's the only place I'm going to accept entries. So please don't leave them on YouTube or Facebook or email or voicemail or anything. You've got to go to the blog, tell me which bar of soap that you want, and then I'm going to do a random drawing next Sunday to pick the winner. I do need to have all of the entries in by the end of the day on Friday, though, because it's kind of a lot to pull together, and I want to do like videos and get everybody's name put down in the drawing and do it all cute the way I do it. So please enter any time from now through the end of day on Friday and pick your soap and win it at, are you ready for the web address? It's GenoaCitySoap.com. You cannot miss the big banner there. If you just go to GenoaCitySoap.com, leave a comment, tell me which soap that you want to win, then we'll do a drawing next Sunday, and maybe more than one of you will win the bar of soap that you left in the comments. I can't wait. This is going to be really fun. So be sure to come back next week too to find out if you won. Okay, soap fans, that does it for me for this week. It's been a good week as always. I can't wait to hear your comments. So here's what you can do if you'd like to feedback. You can go to the website at yrchat.com. You can leave a comment there, or you can find from there the Facebook, the Twitter page, the YouTube, wherever you feel comfortable leaving comments. I will most certainly get them. If you want to call and leave a voicemail, the number is 309-588-4569. And of course, if you want to enter the Soap for Soap Fans giveaway, that website address is GenoaCitySoap.com. I'll be back next week to chat again about our favorite show and to pick a winner for some favorite soap. So that's something to look forward to. I'll see you guys then. Bye.